August 6, 1945. Above the city of Hiroshima, a U.S. Army Air Force's B-29 named Enola Gay released its cargo, a uranium-based atomic bomb codenamed Little Boy. The devastation that followed is documented in history books and survivor accounts around the world. But what the world did not see, and what most of its citizens did not know at the time, was the existence of a secret city in the United States, built almost overnight, hidden from public view, devoted to making the bomb possible. The story of this place and of those who lived and worked within its fenced borders is not just a story of scientific triumph, but of secrecy, control, and costs that are still being uncovered today. The consequences of the Manhattan Project's secret city remain unresolved. Its full impact still a matter of investigation and debate. Claim secret city existed. To understand how a city could be built in secret and why that secrecy mattered, we first have to look beyond the bomb itself and consider the context that defined this hidden world. The early 1940s were not just the last years of World War II. They were the prelude to the Cold War, a period of intense suspicion and competition between the world's emerging superpowers. But in these years, the primary concern within the US government was not Soviet spies or nuclear brinkmanship. It was the fear that Nazi Germany might be developing an atomic weapon of its own, and that, if the United States did not act first, consequences could be catastrophic. Claim atomic bomb race. The response to this fear was the establishment of the Manhattan Project, a top-secret, government-funded research and development effort. Its goal, to build an atomic bomb before America's enemies could claim program existed. Under the leadership of General Leslie Groves and scientific director J. Robert Oppenheimer, the project rapidly expanded beyond its original scope. It would eventually employ over 130,000 people and cost nearly $2 billion, a staggering sum for its time. Claim massive scale. But while popular history often highlights the scientists at Los Alamos or the test at Trinity Site, a less told chapter is the creation of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the so-called Secret City. The selection of Oak Ridge as a central site for the project was not random. The government needed a location far from prying eyes, yet close enough to electrical power and transportation infrastructure. By late 1942, they had quietly acquired some 59,000 acres of rural land in Anderson and Roane counties, forcibly removing the residents, many of whom had lived there for generations. Claim land acquired, claim residents removed. The surviving record establishes that the process was swift, with families given as little as 2 weeks to leave their homes. Once cleared, construction of the new city began at a breakneck pace. Within months, what had been rolling farmland became the site of massive industrial complexes, miles of roads, and hastily constructed housing. At its peak, Oak Ridge housed more than 75,000 workers, engineers, scientists, laborers, and their families, all living and working under strict security protocols. Claim populated secret city. Entry and exit were tightly controlled. Residents were assigned badges and lived with the constant reminder not to talk about their work, even among themselves. A heavy layer of secrecy shrouded daily life. Claim strict security. These were not the laboratory conditions most people imagine. The facilities at Oak Ridge, the Y-12 electromagnetic plant, the K-25 gaseous diffusion plant, and the X-10 graphite reactor were industrial in scale and function. Claim facilities existed. Their purpose, to enrich uranium suitable for use in a weapon. The technical challenge was daunting. Natural uranium contains only a small fraction of the isotope U-235, the material needed for an atomic explosion. Separating enough of it at the required purity and speed demanded unprecedented engineering solutions and huge amounts of electricity. Claim uranium enrichment challenge. The operational problem then was enormous. The Y-12 plant alone eventually grew to cover over 800 acres. Its electromagnetic calotrons, operated around the clock, tended to by a mostly female workforce, many of whom did not know the purpose of their job. Claim Y-12 size, claim caltron workforce. The K-25 plant, at the time the largest building in the world under one roof, attempted gaseous diffusion. A process so complex that engineers often solved new problems as they arose, without knowing if the process would work at all. Claim K-25 largest building, claim engineering uncertainty. Beyond the technical hurdles were social and ethical constraints. The city's sudden growth created housing shortages and required rapid construction of schools, hospitals, and stores. Yet, because of the wartime atmosphere, there was little room for complaint or public dissent. Security concerns meant that even children's letters home were censored, and workers were warned not to speak of project details outside of designated areas, claimed security censorship. Official communications often reminded residents that what you see here, what you do here, what you hear here, let it stay here. The evidence that has survived tells us much about how the city functioned. We know that the government relied on a system of compartmentalization. Workers were told only what they needed to know for their specific tasks, claim compartmentalization. Some operated machinery, others performed chemical processes, still others handled logistics or maintenance. Only a small fraction of the population understood that their combined efforts were producing the fissile material for the world's first atomic bomb. In these circumstances, rumors circulated, but official secrecy was maintained through both persuasion and surveillance. The documented archive confirms that intelligence officers monitored conversations, correspondences, and even social gatherings for potential leaks, claim internal surveillance. Yet, the surviving record also acknowledges that not everything about life in the secret city is fully documented. For example, while institutional records describe the construction, security, and operational protocols at Oak Ridge, much less is known about the daily experiences of workers, especially those in marginalized groups. The city was segregated by race, with African American workers housed in crude barracks and given the most menial jobs. They lived under strict curfews and had limited access to amenities compared to white residents, claim segregation documented. But personal accounts from these residents are scarce. Much of their story remains unrecorded. What is established is that the work at Oak Ridge succeeded in its immediate goal. By the summer of 1945, enough enriched uranium had been produced to arm the Little Boy bomb. The product of years of work in the secret city was loaded onto a train under armed guard and shipped to the Pacific, where it would ultimately be used in the bombing of Hiroshima, claim uranium produced, claim shipment. The bomb's detonation marked a turning point in world history and the beginning of the nuclear age. The consequences for Oak Ridge and for the broader Manhattan Project unfolded rapidly. With the news of the atomic bomb's use, the veil of secrecy began to lift. The existence of the Manhattan Project and the secret city itself was made public shortly after the war's end. Yet even as the government celebrated the scientific achievement, questions both emerged about the costs, visible, and hidden, claim project revealed. One immediate reaction was the institutional push to transition Oak Ridge from a wartime emergency site into a permanent nuclear research facility. Congressional hearings examined the project's expenditures and the treatment of its workers. Some workers were released from secrecy oaths, while others remained bound by post-war security regulations, claim post-war review. Declassified documents reveal that as the Cold War began, Oak Ridge became a crucial asset in the ongoing arms race with the Soviet Union, no longer a temporary city, but a permanent fixture of America's nuclear infrastructure, claim facility continued. At the same time, the human and environmental toll of the project started to come into focus. Workers and residents reported health problems, later attributed in some cases to exposure to hazardous materials used in uranium enrichment and chemical processing. Claim health concerns reported. Soil and water contamination was discovered in the surrounding area, with long-term efforts required to clean up radioactive and toxic waste, claim. Environmental contamination documented. The government initiated studies and compensation programs in later decades, but the full extent of these costs remains a subject of ongoing investigation. The surviving record makes clear that secrecy itself was both a shield and a burden. The government's extraordinary efforts to conceal the city's purpose protected the project from espionage and sabotage, but it also isolated thousands of people from the outside world and denied them both information and agency. Many residents learned the full truth only after the war's end, astonished that their work had contributed to a weapon of unprecedented destructive power, claim public revelation. Yet, even now, not all the effects of the secret city are understood. Some records remain classified, especially those relating to security protocols, intelligence operations, and early post-war nuclear activities. While researchers have pieced together much from declassified documents, the historical picture is still incomplete, claim records incomplete. Controversies continue around the adequacy of health and environmental protections, the ethics of forced relocation, and the legacy of secrecy in American democracy. For those seeking clear answers, the record warns against oversimplification. The history of Oak Ridge and the Manhattan Project's secret city is not simply a story of triumph or tragedy. It is a case study in how governments respond to perceived existential threats, mobilizing vast resources, suspending normal procedures, and imposing secrecy on an unprecedented scale. Claim government secrecy response. It is also a warning. The tools used to win one conflict can shape society, politics, and the environment for generations. The unresolved consequences of the Manhattan Project's secret city remain a subject for historians, scientists, and communities alike. The documentation has revealed much, but not all. Some questions about the lasting health impact, the true environmental cost, and the way secrecy shaped American society are still being asked, and new evidence continues to emerge. The story of Oak Ridge is not over. It is a reminder of the hidden costs of secrecy, the limits of control, and the lasting effects of decisions made in the shadow of war. This episode has traced the documented story of one city that built the atomic bomb and the hidden costs that followed. Its legacy is still debated, its secrets not yet entirely revealed. For history that goes beyond myths, subscribe and keep watching Historia Proibida, where only